Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to be talking about Monday Night Raw from June 27th, 2022. But first, as voted on by the subscribers of this channel, we'll be talking about the New York Magazine Vince McMahon Rita Chatterton thing that brings to light the Rita Chatterton situation between Vince. All right, so for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, Rita Chatterton was the very first WWF female referee. She claimed that Vince McMahon raped her in 1986. She came public with this in 1992. Sporadically, wrestling journalists, specifically guys like Big Span and some other muckrakers, they like to bring this case back up. And since Vince is embroiled with this thing with the $3 million payoffs right now, people think that it's a grand idea to, again, dredge up this accusation from Rita Chatterton. So I'm not going to go through the New York Magazine piece completely, because that would require reading it and all that kind of stuff. And since I'm going to do a review, I need to make this video somewhat easily digestible. The long and the short of it, the Rita Chatterton versions of events is that in Poughkeepsie, New York, about July 15th, 1986, she was approached by Vince McMahon, who had offered her $500,000 a year as a referee. And if she was going to make that money, she was going to have to please him. And in a limousine, she says that Vince forced her head onto his penis and then forced her to sit on him. Then afterwards, she did not tell anybody, and that afterwards she decided she didn't want to work on the WWF TV tapings anymore. And from that point forward, she only worked house shows. Now, as a referee, she was licensed through the New York State Athletic Commission. So she didn't just work for Vince. She could also be licensed through New York. So she would only work house shows from that point forward to avoid working with Vince, because Vince only worked TV tapings. At that point, she worked for the WWF continuously till 1993. Through the New York State Athletic Commission, she worked for the WWF until 1993, and then she left. Now, why did she work on more years and all that kind of stuff? Let's get into the breakdown of the subject. Now, the reason why this magazine is really making the rounds is because it's the first time, really in a long time, that there's new information being brought forward. The new information really isn't much new information, as much as now we have, quote unquote, a corroborating witness, meaning Mario Mancini. Mario Mancini is a job guy for the WWF. He actually worked the Poughkeepsie show on July 15th, 1986. Mario Mancini actually knows Rita Chatterton, and they trained together. So they went to the same, because Rita Chatterton wanted to be a wrestler. She hadn't gotten injured, and that pretty much ended her wrestling career. So they trained together, and they were friends. They already knew each other. According to Mario Mancini, he met Rita Chatterton shortly after it occurred in Poughkeepsie, shortly after it occurred. And she was shaken up. She was upset. She was crying. And that Vince had forced himself. Now, of course, he had not seen that. He was just told that. Rita Chatterton says that she only told two people that what Vince had done to her. One was Mario Mancini, because that was his friend. That was her friend, rather. And the second would be Andre the Giant, because that was also her friend. Now, she says that she did not tell anybody until 1992 because she didn't want to add any extra strain to her parents. Rita Chatterton was 22 years old when she started as a referee in the WWF in 1985. Of course, the rape thing supposedly happened in 1986. Now, her parents, her mother, I believe, died in 1991. Her father died in 1992, and then she went public in late 92, 93. All right. So on its face, all of this kind of makes a lot of sense. Now, she also claimed that she contacted a lawyer after the rape supposedly occurred, but because of the nature of the case, it being her versus him, and she had taken a shower already, and she didn't go to the hospital, despite the fact that she claimed her wrists were black and blue. This was supposedly an uphill battle, and the lawyer did not pursue it any further. Now, when she went public on Geraldo Rivera and another show. I think it's I forget what the show was called, but she went on 2 different TV shows. I watched the video clips. Now, before we get to my viewing of the video clips, let's talk about the article. In the article, the writer of this article, for starters, this person is writing a book on Vince McMahon, who's supposed to come out in March of 2023. I'm not going to mention their name. But so this was great advertising, right? That you get the big scoop interview with Rita Chatterton for the first time in 40 years or 30 years or whatever, talking about Vince McMahon during the height of another new drama of Vince McMahon. And we're gonna introduce that Vince, he raped Rita Chatterton, and Mario Mancini is going to corroborate, but he can't corroborate because he wasn't there. He only heard a story from somebody that he said is a friend of his. And of course, he believed it because that's his friend. So he can't really corroborate the information. Rita Chatterton didn't go into any details with the writer about what occurred. So the writer went to the interviews from 1992, 1993, when Rita Chatterton was on television. On television, that's when she told the story of, Vince McMahon in a limousine offered her $500,000 and forced her into oral sex, and then forced her to get on top of him, and all this kind of stuff. And she also claimed that Vince had lured her away from her job at Frito-Lay with this promise of a $500,000 a year job, and she was going to be on the cover of Home and Gardens and Cosmopolitan and all these different magazines. And so she was lured away with fame and fortune, and she was a single mother at 22 years old. All right, so that kind of sets the stage of what occurred. So the interview didn't really bring, the article didn't really bring a lot of new information, as much as it just talked to the subject and then added, this person says that it occurred too, but this person is a friend of hers and had 20 years to come up with, over 20 years to just regurgitate what came out on Geraldo and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to me, because I take rape accusations so seriously, because rape accusations can destroy lives and destroy careers easily, just the mere accusation can do it. I take these things a lot more seriously than the wrestling media does. They don't press any subject. Like, there's a lot of red flags. If you were listening to, as I did the rundown, there's a lot of red flags that popped up at you. One specific red flag is he offered a referee $500,000. That's a lot of money for a referee in 1985. This is the same Vince McMahon who, when Wendy Richter said she wanted more money, and she was the top female act and part of the spearhead of the Rock and Wrestling Connection. You cannot deny that Wendy Richter was a very, very important part of the Rock and Wrestling Connection. Vince was not paying her $500,000 a year. I think Vince would probably, grit in his teeth that he had to pay Hulk Hogan $500,000 a year. But he's going to pay this referee $500,000 a year? Now, granted, if they were having an affair, or if, maybe Vince told her that to loosen up the thighs a little bit, I can believe that. But just that alone just jumps out at me like that's a lot of money, especially in 1985, 1986. That's a lot of money. Okay, for a referee, I don't think there's any referees that make that kind of money today. The hell, those most wrestlers don't make $500,000 a year right now. Today, it seems ludicrous that Vince would pay that kind of money to a referee. It just seems ludicrous, especially at a time where he went out of his way to screw over Wendy Richter. And I don't think she even asked for that much money. It just seems ridiculous to me that Vince McMahon, who was so tight-assed, he didn't want to pay Jesse the Body Ventura, despite the fact that Jesse the Body Ventura was important to the success of the WWF, and NBC personally really liked his shtick as a heel commentator. Vince didn't want to pay him, but he wanted to pay this referee. I mean, that's just kind of a little weird. Also, because the writer got their information from Geraldo Rivera, and even though today Geraldo Rivera is still alive, Geraldo Rivera and his production team and all that kind of stuff did not respond, nor did the WWF, to anything that was written in this article. So what the writer did was they went back and watched the clips, and then they transcribed parts of the clips. to get the details of what actually occurred. What the writer left out was that in one of the clips, I forget which one, whether it was Geraldo or whether it was the other show that she had done, that she was seeking a settlement from Vince McMahon. She wanted money. And this was left out of the New York Magazine article. And I think that's kind of an important piece that you should leave that in, because, I mean, why wouldn't you want to talk about, a potential lawsuit? Now, when it comes to the legal issue, what ended up happening is Vince ended up suing her. So Vince McMahon filed a lawsuit in approximately 1992-1993 against Rita Chatterton, Geraldo Rivera, his production team, and Dr. D. David Schultz. Now, Dr. D. David Schultz, if that name sounds familiar to you, that is the same wrestler who says that Vince McMahon told him to smack John Stossel. Now, we've talked about that quite a few times on this channel. That's another thing that people just believe without evidence, that Vince McMahon, who, told Dr. D. David Schultz to smack John Stossel, and that he was punished for this, even though the real story is that Dr. D. David Schultz was taken care of by Vince McMahon. He paid Dr. D. David Schultz's fine. He, when he got suspended, he continued to pay him. It wasn't until David Schultz went and messed around with Mr. T and almost had Mr. T quit the WrestleMania card that Vince McMahon finally fired Dr. D. David Schultz. So a lot of people, when they talk about David Schultz, they always leave out the fact that he was, kind of bullying and messing around with Mr. T. They always leave that part out. They never leave out the part where he smacked John Stossel and that Vince McMahon told him to do it, with zero evidence that, of course, that he told him to do it. And then of all the people John Stossel ran into, why would he tell David Schultz to do it? In any event, so I already don't believe the whole David Schultz thing. But the lawsuit apparently was that David Schultz is the one who came up with this idea to try to kind of extort money from Vince. Even though it's not put in those terms. It is that Dr. D. David Schultz conspired with Rita Chatterton to come up with this fake rape accusation. And there were some countersuits from, all sides or whatever. And similarly to how this Rita Chatterton thing is brought up now in response to this other $3 million allegation that they got going on. We don't even know if that's a rape accusation yet. We don't know what that is. So in the midst of that, it was brought up. Now, ironically, not ironically, really, the Rita Chatterton accusation, when it initially occurred, was going on at the same time as the Ring Boy scandal and the steroid trial. So Vince McMahon pulled his lawsuit because he was going to have to go to federal court over the steroid trial. And the Ring Boy scandal was already bad enough. And he just felt like, okay, this accusation is just one too many. I'm not going to pursue that case. Apparently, Rita Chatterton also dropped her case. And so from 1992 to present day, there has been no legal anything, no monies paid and nothing between Vince McMahon and Rita Chatterton. Yet, the Rita Chatterton case continues to come back up because she made the accusations on television. And therefore, a lot of smooth-brained people say, well, it was said on television, therefore it must be true, without thinking that you can say these things about a public figure and not have to prove them. I mean, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, somebody actually accused a Supreme Court justice of rape with no evidence. So you can say whatever you want about, public figures and not have to provide any type of evidence. And nobody, of course, applies any scrutiny to this kind of stuff because these people are all believe all women. We're tough investigative reporters, but we just watch Geraldo Rivera clips on YouTube and we know what occurred because of that. It's like, no, we don't. So we look at this thing where this Rita Chatterton thing keeps coming up because of the McMahons and their political affiliation. One of the last times it was brought up was Talking Points memo during Linda McMahon's run as she was running for Senate. Another time it came up was when she was working for Donald Trump. So every time the McMahons are in the middle of something political or in the middle of another scandal, this kind of thing pops back up. So it's not a thing that has any life or legs to it. It's more of like a zombie story that somebody went on television and said that Vince McMahon raped her and made her all of these grand proclamations. Now, I'm willing to accept certain claims that are being made. Not the $500,000 claim that is absolutely ridiculous. And if I was, maybe if I was 22 years old and idealistic, I may have believed it, but it just seems ridiculous that a referee would make $500,000 just to be a referee. It just seems kind of nonsensical to me. The fact that settlement was not mentioned in the article was suspicious to me, because I would think that would be an important piece. That, it's nothing wrong with, going for legal settlements if you feel like something had been done wrong. But of course, at the time, it seemed like that's what everybody was doing. Because during the Ring Boy scandal, there was a lot of people trying to get settlements out of the WWF. Some of them were lying. And that's the thing about the Ring Boy scandal that is a lot, that blurs the line a lot. Like, there were some who were legitimate, like Tom Cole. I feel like he was legitimately molested and screwed over by, those guys who were molesting people in the WWF. But then there were people who were, making false accusations. So it's hard to piece those things out. Like, some people just talk about, like, when we talk about the Ring Boy scandal, we're talking about the whole thing, which includes the false accusations. Because piecing that stuff out, which you should always do, is very difficult to do. So Rita Chatterton kind of threw her name in the hat, like, oh yeah, I was raped too, but it was by Vince McMahon. And that was that. Now, Vince, according to, the article or whatever, with this David Schultz idea, I don't know where that came from. Like, I would love to know where Vince McMahon got the idea that David Schultz cooked up this idea. Like where does that come from? Because that came out of nowhere. Like, his name is not even mentioned anywhere in this thing. And according to Rita Chatterton, David Schultz wouldn't have even known that, which brings us to another point of suspicion for me, another red flag, that Rita Chatterton claims she only told two people. She told Mario Mancini, who was her friend from training, and she told Andre the Giant, who was a friend of hers. Now, apparently she left the WWF after Andre the Giant died, and then that's when she decided to come public, because her parents were dead, Andre was dead, she had no real connection to the WWF anymore, so now she's going to make this accusation. Now, of course, she's from New York, so she grew up watching the WWF from McMahon Sr., so she was already a fan of that territory. And she figures she has no connections to the territory anymore. Her parents are dead. Her friend, Mario Mancini, no longer works there. And Andre the Giant is not only no longer works there, but he's dead. So now she can tell the truth about this rape accusation. And a lot of fans, it's kind of a nice little split of people who believe Rita Chatterton and those who don't. I think people more likely don't believe her if you watch the videos. And a lot of the weeping comes across kind of phony. That's just me reading it, but it also seems like, again, when there's blood in the water, here come the sharks. I'm very suspicious of anybody who gets engaged with rich people. And what I mean by engaged, I don't mean engaged to be married. I mean, when you put yourself in a position with rich folks, their gold diggers are real. I don't know how else to put it, because I don't really want to call her a liar because I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. There's always the opportunity that it could have happened. I double checked the claim that it was in Poughkeepsie, New York in 1986. That is true. The WWF live event website says that WWF had a TV taping. Vince McMahon did not work house shows during that time. So a TV taping meant Vince would have been there. Mario Mancini was on the card. He wrestled Paul Orndorff that night. And Rita Chatterton probably would have been the referee on that show because it was in New York. It was July the 15th, 1986. And so at least that part could be true. But Mario Mancini adding up I think it happened because I talked to her and she told me it happened. Well, he's had years to come up with this story. He could have just watched the Geraldo Rivera clip again and then just repeated what was said there, and that was it. Added a little bit he didn't add anything really to the story. It was just another repurposing. It's the same food, different recipe. Same accusations, no evidence, just slightly different recipe added to it. And then once you get the idea that people already believe that Vince is a pervert and a weirdo because of Boca Raton and the stuff he does on TV. He was accused of raping Boca Raton too, by the way, or sexual harassment, sexual assault, or something like that. And that was when you have all that stuff going on. Then yeah, people tend to believe these things. Like Vince McMahon is going to end up like Michael Jackson, Bill Cosby, Weinstein, etc. In so much as maybe this stuff is true, but how deeply is people really looking into it? You know, like Michael Jackson paid off one settlement, you know, to Michael Chandler. And then the audio came out later that Michael Chandler's father has pretty much set up this whole thing to accuse Michael Jackson of rape. And Michael Jackson was stuck in a position where, and I think I've said this before to you guys, when it comes to rich people paying settlements, it's not an admission of guilt. It is rich people paying for their time. They don't want to waste time in lawsuits. The Michael Jackson story is probably one of the best examples of that. Because while it seemed like a lot of money to pay out $20 million to Michael Chandler, or however much it was probably somewhere in that neighborhood. It was a pittance to Michael Jackson because he could have stayed in the United States, fought this thing legally. Maybe he would have won. But he would lose out on hundreds of millions of dollars in album sales and, you know, would have dragged this thing out forever. And he had to go on a world tour in which he made 5 times that, you know, so he made a ton of money on a world tour. Didn't think about that $20 million that supposedly went to that kid, you know, so it seemed like, of course he's guilty. Look at all this money he paid. But looking at it from the rich person's perspective, it's a risk reward factor. I could risk all the money that I'm going to lose fighting this case, or I could just pay this, you know, motherfucker whatever they want. They go away, and it is what it is. Now, of course, what ends up happening is that has been used against Michael Jackson over and over and over again. Even though he's been under a federal investigation more than once, even though several of these cases have been proven not to be true, even though he's beaten criminal cases, these things continue to persist because Michael Jackson paid off a settlement one time. That's all that needed to happen. You know, Bill Cosby is a similar situation. He paid off a settlement, and that continues to come back up again and again and again. You know, now some of these cases is very difficult. You know, I'm lumping them all together, but they're all individual cases, you know, that need to be taken into account. Because usually what ends up happening is as the sharks circle, you start seeing all kinds of people come out of the woodwork and say, yeah, I was raped by him too. That's what you saw with R. Kelly. You know, one person says, oh yeah, you know, we all saw R. Kelly. It's been proven that he married Aaliyah while she was underage. Now it was, oh yeah, R. Kelly, you know, raped me too, you know, and survived in R. Kelly and all this kind of stuff. And nobody takes the opportunity to look at each one of these cases individually, because they're all individual crimes. You will have to take at these cases individually and look at them. What they try to do is say, look at all of these people who are making accusations, so therefore it must be true. And that's what they're doing to Vince. They're saying, look at all these accusations, so therefore it must be true. And I'm saying, no, he's rich. Of course, people are going to be throwing their panties at him. So there's probably going to be a certain number of women who he had an affair with. And some of them may have some kind of bitterness about it. It could be in any type of situation. We don't know his side of the story because he doesn't talk about these things. And that's typically how it happens with these rich guys. Again, they're paying for their time. They're not going to take time to sit around and talk about each individual story again and again and again. And then once you do one interview, there's going to be people who are going to say, that interview was a softball. I could do better. I'm going to ask the real tough questions. I'm going to ask the real hard questions and all that kind of stuff. So it's all of that needs to be taken into account. You know, the bottom line is Vince never paid Rich Harrington any money in terms of a settlement. She never got anything. She made the accusation on television. Therefore, wrestling journalists are going to keep bringing it up because to them, it's not settled. To me, it's not settled, but there's no evidence. So what are we talking about here? You know, sure, you may have talked to Mario Mancini, who is admittedly a friend of hers. And let's talk about that for a moment, because I want to wrap this up. What kind of friend would say, yes, 1986, my friend told me that she got sexually assaulted by Vince McMahon, and I shut the fuck up about it. I was quiet about it. I stayed quiet about it for almost 40 years. 1986 is what, 36 years ago? That's almost 40 years. He didn't corroborate her when she was on Geraldo. He didn't say anything until now. This is the first time he said anything about it. I'm sorry. If I thought my friend had been raped or sexually assaulted, you wouldn't be able to shut me the fuck up about it. Of course, his response was, what are you going to do? Stooge on Vince? I'd have been blackballed from the business. And I'm saying, like, if you're a passive wrestling fan, that makes sense. If you're a passive wrestling fan, that makes sense. But do a little bit of scratching underneath the surface. Vince McMahon, he's the most hated man in wrestling today, but he was gaining that reputation in 1985, 1986. He was killing the territories. If Mario Mancini would have gone on television and said, Vince McMahon raped my friend, he would have been a fucking hero to the wrestling business. Oh, fucking Bill Watts and everybody would have been fucking thrilled to be able to get rid of Vince through a rape accusation. They would have been like, hell fucking yeah. They never would have stopped talking about it. He wouldn't have been blackballed from the business at all. He would have been a hero to the business. If he had taken down Vince, helped take down Vince, both him and Rita would have been fucking huge stars. Because by 1992, almost pretty much at that point, it was too late. AWA is dead. Mid-South is dead. World Class is dead. But in 1985, 1986, they were still alive. They still had an opportunity. They still had a chance. Vince was still coming into their town, going head up against them. It would have been perfect. So if you don't know anything about wrestling history, you can buy the whole, I would have been blackballed from the business. It's like, no, if you know anything, you would have known that, those owners in those other promotions, seeing that Vince McMahon is trying to take over their territory, would have looked at that opportunity that Vince McMahon sexually assaulted a woman, a female referee, and you would talked about it on TV. Oh God, WWE wouldn't have been able to run anywhere without somebody having, that run in the newspaper, suspected sexual assaults or rapists, Vince McMahon and his WWF are coming to town or something like that. Some scumbaggery stuff like that. They would have done it. No, you wouldn't have been blackballed from the business. You would have been a hero to the business. So no, that's a framing of 2022. That frame of, I would have been blackballed from the business. That's a 2022 framing, because Vince McMahon is the only game in town now. That's that frame. But if you take that way back to when he actually found out about it, which was in 1986, he would have been a fucking hero. So because that stuff wasn't mentioned, we already know that, the writer is a guy who's selling a book on Vince McMahon, in 2023. And they're not going to, and they also have that believe all women mentality. They're not going to press that subject. They're not going to say $500,000 for a referee sounds ridiculous. I don't know. And I really don't believe Vince McMahon would have offered you $500,000. I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. Can't say it didn't happen for 100% certainty because I wasn't there, but I don't believe it. Because I'm looking at all of the evidence of people saying, hey, yeah, Vince McMahon, I wanted more money. Vince was like, nah. And I'm like, okay, these people are instrumental into the success of WWF at the time. Jesse Ventura, Wendy Richter, and others who said they couldn't get extra money out of Vince in any form or fashion. And he's just going to give all this money to this referee. Now, if you say, well, look at how much money he paid to this paralegal. Apparently he paid the paralegal $100,000 a year, which is way over the amount of money that paralegals make in Connecticut, which is, of course, suspicious. And then the $3 million settlement, or $3 million NDA agreement or whatever, which is, of course, an incredible amount of money. And then you factor in the fact that what I just said, that rich people are paying for their time, really. That maybe Vince did offer her $500,000 because he wanted to, she can work as a referee, but he also wanted her to be his girlfriend on the side, be a little bit of a sugar daddy or something like that. That's entirely possible. So I'm of two minds on that. I can believe that there are certain behaviors that are indicative of, I'm going to rope you in with this promise of all this money and this fame. But I can also believe too, because I know from reality that people see opportunities in rich people. You know, no different than strippers and video vixens. They see opportunities in rappers and music stars and stuff like that. And if things go wrong, you could always just say the guy raped you. You know, the money, when the spigot gets cut off, he raped me. And people will believe it. Because all you have to do is say, he's so powerful and I was afraid for my life. I was so afraid for my career. And all of a sudden that's enough. But Mario Mancini, come on, man. If I would lose, let's say, for instance, his belief is true, that he believed that he would lose not only his job, but that he would be blackballed from the entire business if he spoke up against Vince McMahon. I'm the kind of guy that if my friend had been raped or sexually assaulted, and I truly believed it, fuck my job. Fuck it. I don't need that job. All right? I don't need it. You raped my friend. You know, I don't need that job. I don't need your money. I'm talking about it. We talking about it. We going there. You know? And because that person, you know, that somehow is a rational argument to certain people that you can say, well, I care more about my job than my friend. That's not a rational situation for me. Then again, I'm a pushback kind of guy. I'd have been like, wait a minute. You care more about your job as a job guy? You weren't Hulk Hogan. If you were Hulk Hogan and Hulk Hogan found out about something like this, well, he's got something to cover up. He's making incredible amounts of money with Vince. So he's not going to ruffle too many feathers. But you're a job guy. You're not making that much money. You know, so what do you got to lose? You know, like you could just put on a mask and go to a different territory and you would have been fine. You know, nobody would have known who you are. So this, to me, rings a little bit hollow, but I'll leave it up to you guys. What do you guys think? Now, let's get into talking about Raw. All right, so I talked about that. Now let's talk about Raw. I appreciate everybody who is listening. God damn it, I forgot what I was doing. All right, so my notes. I lost my notes. Okay, there we go. The locker room was celebrating John Cena. It was one big John Cena appreciation night. This was heartwarming as hell. I'm not even going to hold you up. This is heartwarming. Seeing, like, I was kind of annoyed earlier as Cena was walking down it was kind of like the backstage area, and he's shaking hands, and he shakes hands with Ciampa. I'm like, Ciampa's a heel. And I'm seeing other heels clapping him like, that John Cena, I love that guy. I'm like, what? No, I hate this. I hate it. You know, I hate it. And then I started seeing like Jericho and Big Show and Daniel Bryan, and they sending these videos. I'm not even, tripping on the whole, or AEW and WWE, they must be working together. I'm like, I'm not even thinking about that. That to me added some legitimacy to this, that this isn't an angle. This is real. You know? And I was like, holy shit. I thought all of this build up, John Cena talking to the Street Profits, him going back there, inspiring the Street Profits to never give up and to remember who they are and all that kind of stuff. I'm thinking this is all building up to the angle where he's going to be in the ring and here comes Theory. That's what I'm thinking. But that's not what it was. When Jericho and Christian and all these, not Christian, but Jericho and Daniel Bryan and I think Big Show was the first one that came out of nowhere. That stuff told me this is legit. They're legit doing a John Cena appreciation night. This is not an angle. They wouldn't have brought in, solicited videos from AEW to shoot an angle. They wouldn't have done that. This wasn't about, a money-making angle. This wasn't about starting the summer of Cena all over again. This was a legitimate thank you to John Cena for all the effort that he put in. And I was like, wow. And once it started to sit in, it sat with me right before he was introduced by Vince. Because when Vince came out, I laughed every time Vince McMahon comes out. Because I know he's trolling, the people who don't like him every time he comes out nowadays. But he came out and then the entire locker room is there. And Cena is introduced by Vince McMahon personally. The whole night they're calling him the greatest superstar of all time. And of course, some people are going to get tight-assed about that. To me, I'm just going to be honest. I see why they say it. Nobody has ever done this as long as Cena has done it and not ruin their reputation. Stone Cold Steve Austin got domestic violence and shit all on his reputation. I mean, it is what it is. The Rock didn't have the length of time. Everybody loves The Rock, but he was only in the business for a couple of years. Hulk Hogan, God, look at the fucking scandals of Hulk Hogan. The racism, the weird relationship he had with his daughter. People hate him for the union stuff, even though that doesn't make any sense. Because let's say, since we're talking about, backstage shit, if the union was so important to the boys, why didn't they start it? The next generation started. Why didn't Bret Hart do it? Why didn't Shawn do it? Why didn't Undertaker do it? Why didn't Cena do it? Why didn't Eddie Guerrero do it? Why didn't nobody start the fucking union? Because nobody fucking wanted it. But there's a lot of people who are upset about the whole union thing. Okay? You had 40 fucking years. You couldn't get it done. In any event, Hogan is marred. His relationship is ruined to the fan base. They're booing him in large numbers. Bruno, his time was too far gone. He's too detached from what modern WWE is. All the pre-Hogan guys, they're the superstar Billy Graham, Pedro Morales, Bob Backlund, all great guys in their own way. But if you were not on WrestleMania 1 and wrestling and in your prime, you probably, if you were pre-WrestleMania WWF guy, I don't know what to tell you. It's a whole different ball game when Hogan comes in and takes over and we're doing rock and wrestling and everything. I see why they will say John Cena is the greatest of all time. This company is today what John Cena made it. And I think I said that before. And if I didn't say it, I'm saying it now. John Cena was the perfect dude to do what WWE wanted to do following the Benoit tragedy. They wanted to go younger. They wanted a crisp, clean image. A guy who doesn't even really curse. A guy who was great public relations. Great soldier. Perfect. Cena was perfect. He was perfect. And now you see a bunch of people who hated John Cena really, really appreciating him. And you see people, I'm just kind of like, I was floored by that. That's some really heavy shit. And I was like, man, they spent the entire night with Cena doing various backstage things and him hanging out with Seth Rollins. And Seth Rollins is like, remember when I broke your face during that time in my career where I was a little too excited and I was hurting everybody all the time. I know he was so hurt because Bret Hart was starting criticizing him. I think he had kneed Cena in the face. He also hurt somebody else. I don't remember who that was. Then he hurt Sting. Oh, he hurt Finn Balor. Then he hurt Sting. That was around that era. And then Bret Hart started saying how, Seth Rollins needed to tighten up. And Seth's feelings was hurt. He got mad hurt after that. But I loved that interaction with Seth Rollins and John Cena. I thought that was very cool. Seth Rollins was, of course, dressed like an absolute maniac, which is, becoming the best part of his gimmick now. He's wearing those 1998 Christian shirts and the loudest possible suit that he can find. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. It's like he's wearing an abstract painting. That's how ridiculous that suit he was wearing tonight was. But we did get Theory and John Cena, but they did it backstage. And I was like, that was interesting. We're going to forego doing it in the ring. We're going to do it backstage instead. I was like, okay, well, it's your show, boss. I mean, I liked it. I thought it was great. So to talk about the Cena and Austin Theory thing, it started with Cena talking to Ezekiel. And Cena is playing into all of Ezekiel's gimmicks, saying he's zeked up, called him Zeke the Freak, and said he was zeked up to meet him. And then Ezekiel says that Elias is busy hanging out with their brother Elrod. and talking about it would be nice for everybody to trot with Elrod. You just making up shit. So then Cena says, you know what? Never forget who you are. And Ezekiel was like, you know what? That's great. I'm Ezekiel. And he just kind of thanks John Cena. And he turns around and walks away. And then in slides Theory. Theory's like, everybody knows who I am. I'm on Raw every week. And he got to give John Cena the "where you been" speech. That I'm here every single week. You not here. You know, that's become a new tradition that John Cena kind of started when he started saying that shit to The Rock. You know, so pretty much every generation now gets the speech that you're not here, you're always gone. So, Austin Theory said that Cena is out of touch and that he's McMahon's new favorite wrestler. That he's talking about, he's the youngest United States champion of all time. Look at his arms. Look at that championship. He's the man. And Cena's a grown-ass man walking around in jorts. Then he tried to take a selfie with John Cena, who just patiently walked away. And Austin Theory did not get a selfie. He got nothing. And I thought it was a nice moment because Cena is wandering around backstage imparting wisdom to all of the WWE superstars who are not really doing anything. And then you have a couple of baby faces who are inspired by John Cena. So you've got like Riddle and Liv Morgan. This is what I learned from John Cena. It's like a, you know, a public access, like a PBS commercial. What did you guys learn from John Cena? I learned that you should never give up and you should always chase for your dreams. And it's like, it's corny as hell. But at the same time, this is when we need John Cena the most. Like I just talked about a fucking rape case. You know, John Cena's out here trying to make people feel good about themselves, feel good about watching this show, feel good about being involved with the WWE universe. And yes, it's corny and all that kind of shit. But right now, this is the kind of shit that you really need. You know, this was more of a campaign rally than anything Vince did. You know, if you wanted to protect the WWE image, this Cena episode of Monday Night Raw was the best way possible for you to do it. Only people who are politically motivated by John Cena and China are upset about about John Cena. Everybody else loves him. They've grown to love him. They see that he's a huge superstar, that the children love him. Now men like him. You know, it's become almost unanimous that he's crossed over into rarefied air where he is on the same level with Hogan and Rock and all those guys. You know? And so now that he's over there on that side, he can come back and do these huge rallies. And his promo was a masterclass in the aspirational hero. And I haven't talked about this kind of stuff in a long time, but the aspirational hero, what he does is that he shows you humanity's better values, you know? And when it comes to John Cena, he talked about it in that long promo he did, the long speech. And I didn't write down word for word what he said. But he talked about all the things that he learned from the WWE universe and that how we prepared him for everything. And it comes across as, you know, he embodied these things already, but he was able to teach the children this stuff because it was stuff that he learned from dealing with the trials and tribulations of working in WWE. Never giving up, perseverance, humility, you know, toughness, all these different things. You know, these old down home values that people don't talk about anymore, that people don't really focus on anymore. I think that if you want to talk about, you know, a prototypical babyface, this was a Superman promo that he was able to give. And it was a little ham-fisted to a degree because there was so much of it. But it was the kind of inspirational, emotional promo that people needed if you are very negative on WWE right now because of the whole Vince McMahon stuff. This is the kind of shit that you needed. You didn't just need all these people to come in the building and for the attendance records to be there and all that kind of stuff. You needed to see somebody be a positive image and to uplift people. And that's what John Cena did. He came in there and his promo was basically he said about his WWE birthday. And he said he never celebrated milestones and he's always focused on what's next. But tonight is about the universe because the universe allowed him to do this for 20 years. Allowed him to be himself, to tell, they told him when he sucked. They also told him when he was doing pretty good. And he said he wanted to say thank you. Then, of course, he goes into the WWE prepared him for everything. And that the WWE made him a better human being. It taught him empathy and perseverance and all these great qualities that are very important for, human beings to have. And he says that everything he does is outside of WWE is not going to be about himself. It's going to be about we. It's always going to be about us. And if you love something, scream about it. If you hate something, tell us about it. And that he doesn't know when he'll see us again. He'll know when the next time he'll come in the ring. But we just getting started. And then he says his goodbye. Nobody attacked him. There was no angle shot from this. I was stupefied at that. I was like, they took this so seriously. They took it seriously. Applaud them. I will give them the 100% applause. And the only thing that made me mad about this is that they dared to try to follow it. Instead of putting it on last, to give people that emotional release, because this was a big emotional release. Some people are, they're like, oh my God, John Cena's here. And then near the end, you're kind of like, wait a minute, I may never see him again. What's going on? But he did such a powerful promo. And I love the part where he says, I've been coming to Laredo for 20 years. We can do better than that. And the crowd's just like, ah! I was like, okay. This fucking guy. He got him. He's in there working his magic. I'm thinking everybody who claims that they're a babyface in wrestling should have been watching their screen when they are doing this. Now, not everybody can do it. I don't expect Jon Moxley to start doing this shit now, okay? Everybody's going to be different. But this is like when Superman speaks, the entire Justice League should be listening. That's what this was. Even if that's not who your character is, you need to get in the bag like Cena's in the bag, He came out of nowhere, and didn't shoot an angle or nothing, and people walked away happy with it. People were thrilled with this promo. And that's the best you could ask for. They learned some shit. They felt some shit. They're emotionally invested in John Cena and what he might do. Some people are sitting back, biting their nails, hoping that Theory doesn't hit them from behind or something like that. And thankfully they didn't. They let him breathe. And then he got to interact with some other people, put over the Street Profits and Ezekiel, and Seth Rollins got to get some heat on him, and Theory got to get some heat on him. It was great. It was absolutely great. The Cena stuff was perfect. Not so much about the rest of the show, but the Cena stuff was perfect. All right. Okay. I spent so much time on Vince and Cena. Jesus, I got to speed through the rest of this stuff. All right. Last Chance Money in the Bank Battle Royal. Match 1. This match featured Nakamura, Mysterio, the Mysterios, Dolph, Riddle, Styles, Jinder, Veer, Ricochet, and Tommaso Ciampa, and so many others. They did the old trick where Miz faked an injury and rolled outside the ring. Unfortunately, Miz was stupid and got back into the ring before the match was over. He eliminated AJ Styles, exposing that he was playing possum. Then he got eliminated by Riddle. Riddle and Miz were the last two. Riddle got the second to final spot in the Money in the Bank, which was an interesting piece of business. So there was supposed to be an Ezekiel versus Kevin Owens match for the last spot in the Money in the Bank. And apparently that match was canceled, maybe for time, because the women ended up main eventing the show. So there that goes. So I guess they'll do it on SmackDown, maybe. They'll do Ezekiel versus Kevin Owens, because it was supposed to be on this show, and it's not. And I wasn't upset about it either, if we're being honest. All right, so The Miz was not done for the evening. He would come back later on to gloat about what he did to AJ Styles and to build his next feud. So The Miz talks about Logan Paul, because Logan Paul posted on social media of him doing training for his next wrestling match. And The Miz says that he is a multi-talent, talking about himself, and he's going to be on Today's Show. And when celebrities want to get into business, they get involved with him. And he said that Skull Crusher finale, his attack on Logan Paul at WrestleMania, was he didn't say a teachable moment, but you could tell like he wanted to say it. He wanted the gimmick infringe so badly and say a teachable moment. But he said he wanted to teach him a lesson. That, and he said that now Logan Paul has understood that lesson. Now they can become the tag team champions. Then they started talking about Mrs. Balls again. I don't understand why we focus so much on Mrs. Balls. I mean, I'm done with this. I saw so much Miz appreciation on this episode too. Like, I was surprised when I looked online. I saw so many people are giving the Miz his props, especially after he did the whole faking of his knee injury. People were giving the Miz a lot of credit. Anyway, AJ Styles comes out there and punches out the Miz. That leads to the match where Miz basically just walks out. But the best thing about this is not really the shitty disqualification / count out finish, which, whatever. It was actually that Miz has decided that his feud with Daniel Bryan is not over, and that he's now going to start using the Busaiku knee, and used it shittily, by the way. It was not a good running knee. Okay. All you got to do is run and throw your knee in the air. He couldn't get it done. But slowly but surely, Miz has been adopting Daniel Bryan moves, and this is another one. I wonder if he's going to start doing the label lock next. So I love that, across time and space, Miz and Daniel Bryan are still... what? I wish Daniel Bryan could wrestle right now, or Bryan Danielson, I'm sorry. So he could do like a skull crushing finale or something like that on TV to let us know that he was watching and paying attention. Like, those guys beefing for 10 years, 15 years or whatever is good long form storytelling. That's really great shit. I legit think that if Danielson wants to retire, he needs to have his last match with The Miz. That's just me though. And I think if Miz wants to retire, that should be his last match. If they can make that possible, that would be great. Like these two guys, yes, Miz was in the company first, but they've just had this great off and on rivalry that needs to have a big culmination. That, where there's so much history between the two of them, I think they can make it work. That would be excellent. It'll probably not happen, but it'll be excellent. Montez Ford defeated Jey Uso. I cannot wait for the Street Profits and the Usos to have a match, not because I think the match will be great, but because I'm tired of watching the Street Profits wrestle the Usos. I'm just kind of like, you know what? I can do without it. I can do without it, This was very interesting. Finn Balor and Damian Priest approached the Mysterios. And Finn Balor reminded Rey Mysterio that he also has a 20-year anniversary coming up. And, 20 years of, the 619, and he has such a great legacy and career already. I want them to do a Rey Mysterio episode too, by the way. We need a Rey Mysterio episode of Monday Night Raw or SmackDown. Make it SmackDown. I think it'll be better because he debuted on SmackDown. I want all of the 20-year anniversary episode. The Batista one, I want it. I want that. I need Batista and I need Rey. That's going to be great. But Balor and Priest reminded Rey that he's got a 20-year anniversary coming up. And then Priest says that, they're keeping their door open because if you're tired of being led and astray and not really seeing any type of results, and he's looking at Dominic, basically. And then he, a little Spanish from Priest, because, the Mysterio speaks Spanish. And they kind of started tensing up. And Dominic holds Rey back, and he's like, okay, look, we don't got to do that. We're all friends here. I don't know what makes Finn Balor and Damian Priest his friends, but, he thinks so. And Rey gets upset and said, next week we'll be in San Diego. How about we fight you guys there? So the match is made. The Mysterios versus the Judgment Day. next week in San Diego. And I truly believe last week when they wrestled the Mysterios on main event, I said hopefully it will be, a tryout for a future feud. It seems like that's exactly what it's going to be. That doesn't mean that the Judgment Day is out of the woods. All right, that's not what I mean. But at least it's something. All right, I love Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio is one of my goats. I love Rey Mysterio. I really do. I'm not a big fan of how they're using him right now. But if they're going to do a story where they're going to attempt to pull Dominic into the Judgment Day, I'm cool with that. I'm a big fan of play whatever cards you can possibly play. Pull whatever strings you need to pull to create drama, create stories. I'm big on Finn Balor versus Rey Mysterio. If we can get that match would rule. It would kick all ass. I'm still not thrilled with the amount of Judgment Day, and they're not really getting anything as far as they're not really doing much. Like, that's dumb. But I know Edge is hurt. Apparently he's injured. And so we're kind of stuck with this situation now, which I can't do nothing but respect. So hopefully this leads to a really good feud between the two groups. And something for Finn Balor and Rey Mysterio to do. I love both guys. Damian Priest, love him too. Dominic, we'll see. All right, Bianca Belair cut a promo, and she cut a masterclass of a promo. Promo 101, build up your opponent so that they look like something and be something when you beat them. The crux of Bianca Belair's promo is that Carmella has all of the tools necessary to be a great champion and a great wrestler, but she's so shallow and she doesn't care about anything except for how she looks. And if she actually dug a little bit deeper into herself, she could be one of the greats. And she put over Carmella so strongly that certain people started to cheer. Like, people were cheering. Like, yeah, Carmella is kind of good. I'm like, wait a minute. Wait a second. Then Carmella came out there and ruined it. Anyway, Bianca Belair says that Carmella has it. And she's glad that she has it. But she better bring it at Money in the Bank. Carmella says she does have it. She's got it all. And her resume speaks for itself. And if she's not getting the respect that she deserves, she's going to take it. Just like she's going to take the Raw Women's title. And Carmella said what she had to say, then tried to walk away. And then tried the Charlotte special. She kicked off her shoes and tried to boot Bianca Belair in the face. It didn't work. Bianca caught her foot and knocked her down. Telling the story of Bianca Belair, the story that they started, at SummerSlam last year. Bianca Belair staying ready. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And that sometimes she gets attacked from behind because she's not paying attention. Relearn her lesson and she has to stay ready so she'll never have to get ready. Last week, she wasn't paying any attention. Carmella knocked her down. This week, she was paying attention and she kind of caught Carmella's foot. All right, I get it. I like that Bianca Belair really tried to build Carmella up because everybody knows Carmella is basically a walk through a garden at this point. She's going to just get trounced. Who believes Carmella's going to win? Not me. So I'm actually more in the camp that I expect a Money in the Bank cash in more than Carmella winning. But Bianca Belair did a great job there. Liv Morgan, Alexa Bliss. This was an interesting thing. To me, this was the female version of the Theory and John Cena segment. Where, Alexa Bliss is talking about how they're friendly, but, Money in the Bank, everyone's for themselves. And Liv is going to be a great champion one day. And Liv Morgan takes this a lot more seriously. She said that she learned from John Cena that sometimes you just have to step to somebody and tell them that their time is done. And then she steps to Alexa Bliss and says, your time is up. And, Alexa Bliss undercuts the seriousness of that segment by, booping her on the nose with Lily and everything. And I was like, they missed something right there. That was something nice. Look, Alexa Bliss is not super old, but she is a female wrestler who kind of is half in the bag right now. Alexa Bliss used to be, when she was really, really like in it, Alexa Bliss was incredibly charismatic and she could cut promos and she was great. What we're looking at now is kind of like the same thing that happened with Ronda Rousey, where so much time off and she's sleepwalking through this thing. Alexa Bliss is not the Alexa Bliss she used to be. She's a husk of herself. To me, it seemed like she needed Liv Morgan to stand in front of her and say, your time is up. You're done here. We don't need you anymore. I'll take your spot. And for then Alexa Bliss to then fire up and smarten up and straight up and, come back. But then she was kind of like, we'll see. Boop. And I was kind of like, God. That sucks. That sucks. All right. But everybody wanted them to be tag team partners. Apparently Alexa Bliss wanted to be tag team partners too. But Liv Morgan is focused on being a champion, so not really. Maybe they'll get the titles or face for the titles, something like that later. So they have the match. The match is no good. It's babyface versus babyface. The crowd doesn't want anybody to lose. They should never have booked this. It's stupid. Asuka's on commentary. And, Asuka English is, awful. But she's there and she's present. So Liv Morgan wins the match with like it looked like an SOS kind of pin. But she pinned her clean, putting over Liv Morgan. Great win for Liv because Alexa Bliss she hasn't been undefeated since her return because she did lose at Elimination Chamber. But since her return to, active character, usual being on the roster all the time, this is her first real loss. So her first straight up one-on-one loss. So she broke kind of like the little momentum that Alexa Bliss had. Hopefully this leads to something, because I definitely see them as looking at Liv Morgan and saying, this is the younger model of Alexa Bliss. She's a little bit taller than Alexa Bliss. She's not as charismatic. Certainly can't cut promos like Alexa Bliss. I'm nostalgic for old Alexa Bliss. That's how you know I've been watching too much of this shit. But it was interesting. I thought it was a very interesting story that they were trying to tell there. I wouldn't have had the match, but I would have had Liv tell Alexa that her time was up and that it was my time is now. I definitely would have done that, but I probably would not have done the match. Babyface versus babyface, well, that doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Probably would have had them work as a tag team again or something. All right. Bobby Lashley defeated the Alpha Academy. Theory was a special enforcer. They tried to jump Bob after the match. It didn't really quite work out. Bob had Otis on his shoulders. Now, he did pick him up from like the second rope or something like that. So he didn't he squatted him, which would have been more impressive, but probably would have hurt Bob's back or something. Bobby is 45. I don't expect him to squat Otis. In any event, Theory didn't do anything else on this show except try to jump Bobby Lashley and fail, and he talked some jazz to John Cena. Maybe they're going to have him drop this belt, and then he's going to feud with John Cena, or maybe he's not going to feud with John Cena at all, and that whole thing was a bunch of horse pucky. I don't know. I'm not the guy who supposedly has the scoops. I'm not scoops guy. I'm not that guy. I'm just watching the show, and but I really was expecting more from Theory, but I guess they have a plan. We'll see. We got a Cody Rose exclusive. This was Cody talking about rehab, and that he really did a good job of selling Money in the Bank. He talked about being at the peak of his career and that he wanted to take it to the next level for Money in the Bank. And this was something that has eluded him his entire career, and he was looking forward to participating in Money in the Bank. But he was told he's going to be out for 9 months. And he said he's trying to respect that. So it's going to be hard for him to watch Money in the Bank knowing that he should be in it. But it has such a great collection of talent, and then he goes down each person one by one, talking about their strong suit. Perfect shit. Then he says that he stops at Seth Rollins and he says that, I don't have any favorites, but Seth winning the world title kind of gives him an idea. And I was like, God. See, I'm not. This next segment, next kind of little piece I'm going to talk about here, it's going to make me seem like such a WWE homer. Now, you're such an E-drone. But look at what WWE has done. There's like 7 guys in this match. Like 4 of them, you legitimately want to win. And you can see them doing fun shit with the briefcase. You got Seth Rollins and the threat of them doing a repeat of the heist of the century. But not just that. You've also teasing that Seth Rollins could be the champion when Cody comes back. So while some people may grumble at that, think about that storyline where if Seth is the champion and Cody beats Seth for the title, that could fucking rule. Okay? Because then it could be like, well, Seth was the reason he wasn't in the Money in the Bank match. And he wasn't going to be in there anyway, but he wasn't the reason he wasn't in the Money in the Bank match. You could tell a really good long form story with that. I mean, including Cody's big build up where he's, working out and, having his Rocky or montage in the gym like Apollo Creed sweating and, who would be Apollo Creed in that situation? It wouldn't be Lee Johnson. Who would it be? Who had to be the black guy to teaching Cody to get back in shape and teaching him to chase the chicken? Who would it be? Anyway, it can't be Arn Anderson either. Maybe it'd be Terry Taylor. Maybe Terry Taylor or Shawn Michaels. Listen, Cody, you gotta chase the chicken. You gotta catch the chicken. You can catch the chicken. You can catch Seth Rollins. I know I know Cody's really gonna put his 100% all into building himself up to seem like an absolute world beater with the rehab footage and everything. All right. To continue along that point, Riddle, it'll be a great Bro in the Bank. You can legitimately see him winning it, getting revenge for Randy Orton, perhaps even Randy Orton turning on him, later on, if he was to become the champion or something like that. That could really be a great story. Again, this is, punctuated by a potential storyline with somebody who's injured. So, Riddle has a vendetta against Roman Reigns, whatever. That could be great. Then you got Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn mixed up with the bloodline, and he'll never cash the Money in the Bank in on Roman Reigns, but he would cash it in on Brock Lesnar if given the opportunity. So you're kind of like, I could see all 3 of those things. I would not be mad at all if either one of those 3 guys won. Only person I'm looking at the Money in the Bank that I probably would be mad that they won is Omos. Mainly because he so doesn't need it. And, it's very bizarre. So you got the 4th guy, you got Drew McIntyre. Because Drew McIntyre is a possible winner as well. And he's already said, Clash at the Castle. I want me some Roman Reigns. And you kind of like, that's in September. It's not far away. It's the closest thing to a home game he's ever going to have against Roman. It's going to be a big crowd. It's going to be fun. So I'm very, very interested in those 4 guys. In the lead up to this, I thought maybe Drew would win it, or maybe that Riddle would win it. But now they've made such a compelling story with Sami Zayn, and they got such a compelling story going on with Seth Rollins, that this could legitimately be an all-timer in terms of Money in the Bank. The only problem is Omos. Omos sucks. It is what it is. All right, so the final thing we got to discuss here, the last chance eliminations 6-way. Becky Lynch, Nikki Ash, Doudrop, Tamina, Xia Li, and Shayna Baszler. So, this match was fine for what it was. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. Becky Lynch has stealthily been using her own name and face to work with women who are kind of underrated. You know, she did 2 weeks with Dana Brooke. Why would you do 2 weeks with Dana Brooke? She didn't need to wrestle Dana Brooke at all. But she did, you know, a bunch of segments with Dana Brooke. Helped Dana Brooke get over. She's been working with, you know, Doudrop and Tamina and all these people who, you know, she doesn't really need to work with them. You know, like she was in the ring taking strikes and stuff from Xia Li. Like she eliminated Xia Li a little bit later, but she was literally let Xia Li work her over a little bit. You know, this is kind of undercover. Oh, hey guys, just use me to, you know, showcase some other women. You know, kind of a thumb in the eye a little bit to the whole Sasha Banks thing. And Becky Lynch is known for doing that stuff. She kind of petty too. Where she'll have no problem thumbing the other chicks in the eye. So the women's, Becky Lynch wins the match. She taps out Nikki and pins Xia Li. Baszler was pinned by Doudrop. Doudrop also pinned Tamina. That led to Doudrop and Becky Lynch being in the final. And it was a manhandle slam from the second rope. It was really great finish. And Becky Lynch is finally in the Money in the Bank ladder match. Now, the women's Money in the Bank is not as strong as the men's. On paper, you look at it and you say to yourself, outside of maybe two people, I don't really know who could possibly win. Becky Lynch winning would be a waste of the briefcase, if we're being honest. But they've done a good job with Liv Morgan. They've done a good job with Lacey Evans. You know, they've done a good job of really getting them over. Liv Morgan just has been a year-long process of them trying to get Liv Morgan to the place that they want her to be so that she can be made a champion. And Lacey Evans, they spent weeks telling her backstory so that maybe she'll become a top babyface. They become their female version of Sergeant Slaughter, you know? And this gives them the opportunity to, now Money in the Bank, it depends on how you use it, of course. Like anybody, you can put a belt on anybody, if we're being honest. It's all about how you choose to do it. And I think that they can make it a compelling story with Lacey Evans winning the Money in the Bank and growing up poor. You could use the whole growing up poor, Money in the Bank, you know, that kind of contrast there. But they've also done a great job, again, Liv Morgan, a year-long build. Becky Lynch is another one because she has this obsession with the championship, this obsession with the title. You also have Raquel Gonzalez. They did a good job with her, in so much that she was so close to beating Ronda Rousey, and she failed. She didn't quite get it done. But you're looking at her and you're saying maybe one more shot in the right circumstances and she would have won. You know, she would be it. And with Shotzi, you kind of have been showing that she's kind of crafty. You know, we're not really sure, we haven't been sold that Shotzi could win yet. Just like we haven't really been sold on Alexa Bliss winning. Alexa Bliss, they were building her up, it seemed like, because she was the first person that where they mentioned Money in the Bank. You know, they mentioned her cashing in already and winning. But her momentum has just, you know, evaporated, you know. And it's become, she doesn't have her persona anymore. Ever since she started messing with the Fiend, it's kind of just not been working out. But it is what it is. So Raw was extremely solid. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The 3 hours kind of went by pretty fast for me. You know, I know some people probably didn't like it as much, but this is probably my favorite Raw in a long time. Let me know what you guys think. Like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.